For 1,000 years, it has stood guard over London, a symbol of royal power, a fortress, a palace, and a prison. But behind its stone walls lies a history far darker than most people imagine. Today, we're unlocking the secrets of the Tower of London, a place where royal ambition, betrayal, and tragedy were written in stone and blood. Welcome back to the channel. The Tower of London wasn't originally built as a place of horror. When William the Conqueror began construction in the 1070s, he intended it as a display of his new Norman power, a formidable castle to dominate the local population. The imposing White Tower was a statement. I am your king, and I am here to stay. For centuries, it served as a royal residence, a secure place for the monarch and their court. It even housed a royal menagerie with exotic animals like lions and polar bears, a spectacle for Londoners. But the tower's role began to shift. Its thick walls and strategic location made it the perfect high-security prison for enemies of the state. The first recorded prisoner was Ranulph Flambard in 1100, but it was during the Tudor period that the tower truly earned its grim reputation. This was an age of intense political and religious turmoil, and anyone who fell out of favor with the monarch could find themselves staring at the grim walls of the tower. Think of the names: Anne Boleyn, Catherine Howard, Lady Jane Grey, Queens of England, who went from the pinnacle of power to the executioner's block within these very grounds. Anne Boleyn's story is perhaps the most famous. Accused of treason and adultery by her husband, King Henry VIII, she was imprisoned in the Queen's house. Can you imagine her fear, looking out at the very spot on Tower Green where she would soon be executed? Unlike common criminals who were publicly executed on Tower Hill, Anne was granted a private execution within the tower's walls, a small mercy. A French swordsman was even brought in to ensure a swift end. Her final days were spent in a whirlwind of disbelief and terror, a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change at the Tudor court. Just a few years later, Henry's fifth wife, the young Catherine Howard, met the same fate on the very same spot. And then there was Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, thrust onto the throne against her will. She was quickly deposed by Mary I and, at just 17 years old, was executed for treason. Her husband was executed on Tower Hill just before her, and she reportedly watched his body being brought back into the tower for burial. The stories are heart-wrenching. These weren't just historical figures. They were people caught in the brutal machinery of power. But executions were only one part of the tower's dark story. What about torture? Contrary to what Hollywood might show you, torture wasn't a daily occurrence at the tower. It was technically illegal in England, but it could be sanctioned by the king or the Privy Council. When it was used, it was to extract confessions or information, particularly during times of political crisis. One of the most infamous devices was the rack. It was a wooden frame designed to stretch the victim's body until their joints dislocated. Guy Fawkes, of the Gunpowder plot fame, was subjected to the rack after he was caught trying to blow up Parliament. The official records say he held out for as long as he could, but under extreme agony, he eventually broke, revealing the names of his co-conspirators. His signature on his confession before and after torture tells a chilling story. The first is clear and strong. The second is a barely legible scrawl, a testament to the immense pain he endured. Another terrifying device was the scavenger's daughter, an A-frame contraption that compressed the body, forcing the head down to the knees. It was said to be so powerful it could force blood from the nose and ears. Then there were the manacles, which hung prisoners by their wrists for hours and the thumbscrews. These weren't tools of justice. They were instruments of terror, designed to break a person's body and spirit. Let's talk about some of the tower's most enduring mysteries. The most famous has to be the princes in the tower. In 1483, after the death of King Edward IV, his two young sons, 12-year-old Edward V and his 9-year-old brother Richard, were placed in the tower by their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. They were supposedly there for their own protection, awaiting Edward's coronation, but then they vanished. Richard was crowned King Richard III, and the boys were never seen again. What happened to them? The most popular theory, immortalized by Shakespeare, is that Richard had them murdered to secure his claim to the throne. This story gained even more weight in 1674, when workmen discovered a wooden chest containing the skeletons of two children buried beneath a staircase in the White Tower. Were these the remains of the lost princes? We may never know for sure, but the tale adds a layer of tragic mystery that still haunts the tower today. Another famous prisoner was Sir Walter Raleigh. A favorite of Queen Elizabeth I, he was an explorer, a poet, and a courtier. But he fell from grace and was imprisoned in the tower not once, but 3 times. His final stay lasted for 13 years. It wasn't all grim, though. He was held in the Bloody Tower, but was allowed to live there with his family, conduct chemical experiments, and even write his history of the world. He even had a garden where he grew tobacco from America, but his freedom was an illusion. In 1618, he was finally executed, a sad end for one of the great figures of the Elizabethan age. The ghost stories of the tower are as legendary as its history. With so much tragedy contained within its walls, it's no surprise that it's considered one of the most haunted places in Britain. The ghost of Anne Boleyn is said to be its most famous spectral resident. She's been reportedly seen wandering near the site of her execution on Tower Green, sometimes carrying her own head. She's also been spotted leading a ghostly procession in the Chapel Royal of St. Peter at Vincula, where she is buried. Another spirit is the White Lady, who is said to haunt the White Tower. Legend has it she was once seen waving to a group of children from a window. Then there is the story of the 2 soldier guards who saw the ghostly figures of 2 small children in nightgowns clutching each other in fear. Before they faded into the stone walls of the Bloody Tower, the spirits of the lost princes perhaps. And the screams sometimes heard are attributed to the Countess of Salisbury, who was executed at the age of 67. She reportedly ran from the executioner and had to be chased down and hacked to death. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, these stories reflect the very real human suffering that occurred here. As the centuries passed, the tower's role as a state prison diminished. The last state prisoners were held here during the World Wars. Several spies were executed by firing squad in the tower's rifle range. The infamous Nazi leader Rudolf Hess was even briefly imprisoned here in 1941 after his mysterious flight to Scotland. The last prisoners of the tower were the Cray twins, notorious London gangsters, held here for a few days in 1952 for failing to report for national service. Today, the Tower of London is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, visited by millions of people each year. They come to see the crown jewels, the iconic beefeaters in their Tudor uniforms, and the famous ravens. Legend says that if the 6 resident ravens ever leave the tower, the kingdom will fall. It is a testament to how the tower has transformed from a place of fear into a cherished national monument. But as you walk its cobblestones and gaze up at its ancient towers, remember the stories we've talked about today. The Tower of London is more than just a tourist attraction. It's a living history book, a place where England's most dramatic and often brutal history unfolded. It's a monument to power, a graveyard of ambition, and a silent witness to 1,000 years of secrets. What do you think is the most shocking story from the Tower's history? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the dark past of the Tower of London. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating and fearsome places. See you next time.